Attenzione! Allarme qualità audio. Attenzione! Indipendentemente dalla nostra volontà, l'audio di questo podcast non è qualitativamente eccelso. Ciò nonostante, la redazione di FantascientifiCast ne ha scelto ugualmente la distribuzione, poiché i contenuti sono interessanti ed il livello dell'audio non pregiudica la loro comprensibilità e fruizione. Ringraziamo fin d'ora i nostri pod ascoltatori per la loro pazienza e comprensione.
Scotty, we need power.
FantascientifiCast, podcast di fantascienza e cronache dalla galassia.
Scoprire i mondi dell'editoria indipendente e self-publisher, ambasciatori del fantastico, bizzarro e perturbante. 29 e 30 marzo 2025, alla Casa dei Giochi
Allora, è con grandissimo piacere che adesso stringo l'ultimo panel della giornata. Avete già visto prima Gary Jones, una persona simpaticissima. Adesso abbiamo un'altra persona che a me ha ricordato moltissimo Peter Jurassic, è veramente una persona splendida, vedrete che ve ne renderete conto, un grandissimo attore, Bob O'Reilly.
Hello. How are you? Kapla. No. Kapla. Oh. I'm not with Klingons tonight, I can see. Kapla. There we go. Kapla. Kapla. There we go. The Klingon language, I won't speak the Klingon language tonight, but I might sing some Klingon opera. If you know Klingon opera, it goes on for 16 days. So stay awake. Max said to say hi. Now, when was he here? Twice. Yes, well, I just did a show with him, and he sends his best to all of you, and I'll actually sing a song he wrote, and maybe later on. You remember the show he did, the here, with the story? So I'll have to have somebody get up and read with me, because I won't be able to read the Italian the way it should be read. So, okay. So anyway, usually I start off with telling the story of how a Klingon becomes a Klingon when you're not a Klingon. So I started, I've always been a Star Trek fan from the original show, and one of the great things I did in my life was become pretty good friends with two people who are part of science fiction. One was Jimmy Doohan, and Jimmy and I spent a week in Germany together. We came early to get accustomed to the hours, and we just had a great time. And later on, I found out he was the creator of the Klingon language, which I had to learn because I gave a lesson in the Klingon language on CD-ROM. I don't know if anybody ever saw it here, but so the man who expanded the language is Mark Okrand. I don't know if that book is here. Yes. And so Jimmy invented the language on the set, but they had to expand it, so they brought in Mark Okrand, who was a linguist, and he put together a lot of different languages to create our language, the Klingon language. And so they flew him into Hollywood when I had to do this because they knew I was hopeless to do this by myself. And so he would sit here, and the camera would actually be like 3 feet away from me. And he would go, "Lak tuk tuk twa." And I go, "Lak tuk twa." And they go, "No, no, no, no. You have to spit." Okay? "You mean lak tuk twa?" And he said, "Yes, yes, 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 yes. That's good. Lak tuk twa." Then they had to clean off the lens on the camera. You know, so I mean, Klingons are just. It doesn't make sense to have a Klingon dress the way we are, be the way we are, and then film us the way we are, because number one, they put us in costumes that, as soon as it goes above 80 degrees, you just start sweating incredibly. So even in your shoes, like the shoes were all made for one actor, Michael Dorn. And Michael was, he had a size 13 shoe. So we would start sweating in our feet, and we'd slide in our feet because we had, we're like going like this. And, but oftentimes the hair was the worst thing that you could have on a Klingon, this long hair. And many aliens on the shows, on all the shows, didn't have hair like Klingons. So there's a reason for that. Because once you start sweating and your hair starts sweating and everything gets wet, you have the director will say, "Okay, Bob, what I want you to do is I want you to look this way with your, whatever it's called." I used to call it a ray gun on the set, and they go, "No, no, 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 no. It's not a ray gun. It's a disruptor." "Oh, I get it. It disrupts everything." It's like, yes, yes, Bob, it's not called a ray gun. So you would go like this, and he said, "But I want you to turn right here in camera and then shoot past camera." And I go, "Okay." And he'd go, "Action," and I go. And what would happen was all the hair, because you were doing this motion, all the hair would go. And you go, "Cut." Director would go, "Cut, cut." So time after time, the directors would start blaming you, and you'd have to explain, "No, it's my hair, Anyway, there were many other occasions that are just impossible to be a Klingon. One is spitting, I've already described that. But when I came to the show the first time, they said, "Well, my agent called me. I'd already done one show called Manhunt. And Manhunt was a gangster, and I was used to playing gangsters. I'd been doing about 15 years of playing gangsters or bad guys, did most of the shows on TV at the time. But they said, "So you're doing a gangster on Star Trek?" And I went, "Okay, great." So I did the show, and what happened was, suddenly we gave us new sides, and they were cutting my role down, and I went, "Well, what happened?" And I didn't find out for many years. What happened was the lead bad guy, I was the second lead bad guy. The first lead bad guy got to the set, And the guy questioned him and said, well, I need to see your ID. And the guy got angry at the security guard at Paramount and backed up his car and smashed it into the security, little building. And once he had done that, he was never allowed on the Paramount lot again. But nobody told us this. So what I found out later was they all felt very bad that my role was cut down. And so they kept bringing me back time after time for auditions. And I would go in, I wouldn't get it. I had like 12 auditions to get this role. And then finally they come up with a Klingon. And my agent called me up and he said, you got a role for something called a Kling something? And I went, a Klingon? And he said, well, maybe, it could be that. So I was really excited. And so I got the sides, and Frakes was the director, I found out once I walked in. I didn't know Frakes very much. And the role was supposed to be somebody who is Machiavellian. So I went, Machiavellian, thinking Klingon. So I read the first sides of the thinking Klingon, and I'm like, and I looked up at the end of the scene, and they were all sleeping. And Frakes looks at me and he goes, Bob, that was very interesting. Could you, you know what a Klingon is, right? I said, yeah. I said, okay, this next scene that you read, I want you to go all out. I mean, all out Klingon, the most Klingon you think you could ever be. And so this is what I did. I went, got it, okay? Made them fall asleep in the first scene? Okay, so I went. And after they peeled one of the auditors off the ceiling, he said, Bob, that's good. I think they were terrified of me. And after that, they sent me to the set, and you have to have a life mask. The old name for it was the death mask. Now they call it the life mask. So, they put all this, I guess it's like nowadays, it used to be plaster, but now it's like a plastic, but it's plaster too. And it has to dry on your face, and then they crack it open, and it comes out, and there's your face, and then they can make another face out of it. I'm not explaining this very well, but after all, I'm Klingon. So they need to do it, and they put straws up your nose or in your mouth if you want. And you have to sit there, and when it dries, it becomes very hot. So I was making this, and he said, and Michael Westmore said at the end of it, he said, you know what this means, don't you? And I said, yeah, I die at the end, like every other character I ever did. And he said, no, it's a life thing. And I went, what? He says, it's a life thing. This is for the rest of your life. And I never got it, I didn't get it. And then finally when I did the third show, because I did the first show, and then they dropped me for a little while, and then I did the other two. But I didn't know it was an arc of the character that was to be planned. And I don't think they knew that the arc would go from one show to another show either. But that's another story, going from Next Gen to doing scenes with Ferengis, which was comedy Klingon at its highest. And Armin Shimmerman, who plays the head Ferengi, what was his name? Quark. We had done 2 other plays together. We had done Mr. Roberts, and where he played the captain, I played Doc. and if you know the play. And then we also did Hamlet, Shakespeare, and which was it was crazy Shakespeare. It wasn't real Shakespeare. It was, but we had a lot of fun. So I knew Armand very well, and so anyway, I get to the set. The first day of playing Gowron, and Frakes looks at me and he's smiling and he's very happy and he's like, my Klingon is here. And if you know, Frakes is very robust. He's like a big, huge man, and he's just like, yeah, my Klingon's here, yeah. And he goes, so I want you to do the eye thing. And I went, what eye thing? And he goes, oh no, not one of those kind of actors. And I went, and I said, uh-oh, I lost him. I lost the guy. So I went, okay. Jonathan, do you mean this? And he went, yeah, do that all the time, everywhere. So even in the bathroom? No, you don't have to do it there. So so I did it. He was enthralled. I was enthralled that he liked what I was doing. But it was, I have eyes that they bulge a bit. And I was always warned when I first started filming, 2 cinematographers told me, as a young actor, they said, you have to watch your eyes. Because, Marty Feldman and Betty Davis, she had lesser, he had more. But the lesson was from a cinematographer, if you go like this, and see, you get a light source, a good light source like this here, and you go like that, it can be comedic because the whites pop out, and it's usually comedic, and that's what they were, because I was playing bad guys, so I couldn't be comedic. So they were always warning me about that. But for a Klingon, it was perfect, because it was, and the very first shot of my character ever, which I have, it's such a short scene. It's like, all I have is the word human. That's it. And I'm standing there like this, and they put a light source, right on the floor, so they catch all my eye for the camera, and Picard is here, and he's up to here on me, and I just go like this. I go, human. Like the most disgusting thing in the world is a human, and that was my introduction to Star Trek for me, anyway, because I was just the greatest fan of all, of the original. Never had it was on Friday night, and I never had a date on Friday night. So now I'm going to open it up to questions, too. So if anybody wants to ask a question, otherwise I'll start teaching you Klingon. You don't want that, Yes. Mm-hmm. Our language. Yes. So my question is, do you feel a bit of a Klingon even in real life? Well, when Michael Westmore said what he did, yes. The answer really succinctly, yes. It's like it's been with me now over 30 years, and I've been everywhere in the world. That I can think of, very far away places and very close places, and we even make up songs. I mean, J.G. Hertzler and I, Martok, we do things like, we are the Klingons, no others needed here. Gowron, Martok, the men you love to fear. Lurs, Bait, the core, and Brother Worf. Honor and glory, your sticky metamorphs. If there's a problem, we'll resolve it. Kill them all first, that's the only way to solve it. Klingon, baby, the Klingons. Ain't no Klingons, baby, we're the Klingons. And we, a lot of times, we've even made bands. You know, we had for a while we had a band. And we would travel to the conventions, and we had bands. We had a batleth that we made into an electric guitar. That was fun, but we would sing all these crazy songs. Recently, we just did one. Do you know the song "Johnny Be Good"? Let's see if I can get the first word, and if I can't, I'll just move on. But deep down Louisiana, close to New Orleans, way back in the woods among the evergreens, there's a certain old cabin made of earth and wood, where lived a country boy named Gowron Be Bad. He never ever learned to read or write so well, but he could play a batleth like a bat out of hell. So. And it goes on like that. So, you know, it's, but we've just had a ball with it. And yeah, we kind of do, because I taught the language. Mark Okren became a good buddy. Jimmy Doohan became a great friend, you know, and so through the years, we just keep being Klingons, you know, and we oftentimes, we don't do it always, but we dress up as in our makeup, and that's a hoot. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's right. A Klingon, a pink Klingon hat, you know. Well, I am fun. Except my children don't think so. But that's okay. Yes. Oh, and here's a Klingon himself. How many people here are Klingons? Good, Klingons. 3 Klingons. We wanted 90, but, you know, we'll take 3. Well, let me think about that. Die? No. No, I often said, no, I like to die because I got 3 more shows out of it. You know, so some people ask me that. So, but the most difficult thing, well, it was always, we had to fight the makeup, not so bad, but it was the heat and destroying the makeup. One funny story was, I did a scene, and I'm the kind of actor I don't like to cut myself. You're not supposed to cut as an actor ever, but sometimes you know something that they don't know, so you feel like you have to cut. But I never do. I'll tell you 2 stories that have to do with that. But I was doing a scene with Quark, Shimmerman, and a drip of sweat got on the end of my nose, and I obviously knew it was there, and he was doing, and it was a close-up on me. It wasn't a master, it was a close-up. So you're like this, you know, and I'm doing the scene, and I know it's there, and I'm saying the lines, and he's saying the lines to me, and I'm saying it back, and I'm going, I'm thinking on 3 different levels. I'm saying the lines, and I'm with, you know, Quark, and I'm also going, why doesn't the director cut this because I got a big piece of sweat on the end of my nose, and it won't come off, because I kind of went, in the shot, I went to shift it, and that big piece of sweat just hung on. And finally it was cut, and the director said, okay, let's move on. And I was going, no, we can't move on because you'll never be able to use that. And, he was kind of upset with me to say that in front of the crew. And he said, what? And I said, I had a big thing of sweat hanging off my nose, and you can't use it, And he was, and so thank goodness in those days we had just had playback. When I first started, it didn't have playback, and you know what playback is? Yeah. In the olden days, you had dailies, and you would go see the dailies because you didn't have playback. You had to wait till the film was processed. But in modern day, then you could look at it instantly. So they played it back, and they went, "Oh yeah, we can't use any of this," So it was that. And what was the other? What was the original question? And the other difficult thing, it wasn't even on Star Trek. It was, I was always a bad guy. So I shot somebody, and I was threatening everybody else. But I had to do a very strange thing that you don't normally do on camera. I had to go around. The camera, I think, the camera was here. And I had to go, the camera was behind me, that's right. And I had to shoot the guy like that. And then I had to threaten everybody in the room. And the bullet was very weird. You can hear me all now. So the bullet popped out, and the shell stayed in the gun, which is not supposed to happen. So I went like this, and boom. And then I realized, and I looked down, because it didn't feel right, and the shell was out there, and I went like this, all the way around camera, so that the camera wouldn't see it. And it worked, and they printed it. And after, I don't know how a cinematographer can see that, because their screen is about that big, if that big, even smaller. But when their eyes are in there, it's like that big. He saw what I did, and he said to the director, "You owe him another job." And then he explained what I had done, and he gave me another job. It was like, woo, not bad.
You also told me while we were having a chit chat that you had problems eating while in
Yeah. This is great, because you can all hear me without it. Sorry.
Oh no, they are recording.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So the question was, I had a little problem eating one day on the set. What happened was they hired a young producer. And the young producer came to the set, and he wanted to change everything. Because he wanted to save Star Trek money. He wanted to save the company money. And Klingons always get the food sent to them, and then they go to their room after shooting and at lunchtime, and they sit in front of the mirror, and they feed themselves, because we take out our teeth, and then we feed ourselves in a mirror so we won't mess up our hair, mostly, and part of our makeup. So we eat little bites, and we go. So this guy says, the young producer said, no, you're not going in your rooms, you're not getting the food sent, you're going to the commissary, which is the big place where everybody eats during lunchtime. And it was like, what? Are you insane? And you get it was about, I don't know, half an hour to 45 minutes for lunch for us. And so we all go off to eat. And we come back, and the makeup department looks at us and goes, "Oh my God, And the producer comes, young producer comes in and says, "You have to have them on the set in 10 minutes. We're ready to go. We're ready to shoot." And the makeup guy goes, "I don't think so. You're not going to have them back for about an hour." And he was like, What? You can't do that. I'll call the head producer." He said, "Go ahead. Call the head producer." And so, but what happened was Michael Westmore was supposed to be informed of this. He wasn't on the set, so the young producer bypassed him, and he shouldn't have done that. You never bypass the head of makeup, especially when you have Klingons, because I think there were like 5 of us that day at least. And so then time is going by, and we don't show up to the set, and it's like boom, 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 boom. All the money that he thought he saved, he never saved. It was so. We finally did get on the set, but it was like, I think that was the last day of that young producer. So, poor guy. He was just trying to do his job, but not with Klingons. We have to really, you can't save time with Klingons. It's just impossible. There was another time we came, and it was like, I forget, it was the show where we attack it was Deep Space Nine, where we attack the station, the Deep Space Nine station. And we had like about 100 Klingons, and it was like the most amazing thing I've ever seen. To get every Klingon had to have their own makeup person, and it was just incredible. But all of a sudden, they just shoved me in a chair. And they actually rented out another sound stage just for makeup, which is like, that's $55,000 a day to rent, you know. So they did that, and they shoved me in a chair very quickly. And the guy gets the what Michael Dorn calls the turtle, you know, and you put it on your head. And before he did it, I said, "That's not my head." And he goes, "What do you know? Just put it on. Just be quiet while I said, "No, you can't put that on me. That's not my head." Because every Klingon has their own individual turtle, and it's actually a family. You know, that if you're, I don't know how they do that, but that's the genealogy or whatever you call it, is that you pass that down to your children. But I don't know how, but, you know, what am I? I ain't no doctor. Jim, anyway, no, he was I'm not a bricklayer, Jim. I'm a doctor. But, so he tried to put it on, and I said, get Michael Westmore down, please, get him down. He's the head of makeup, Michael Westmore. And so finally he came down. He ran down after getting 2 calls or 3 calls. And he said, "What's the matter, you know? What's the matter, Bob?" And I said, "He wants to put this, and it's not mine." He said, and he looked at the makeup guy, and he went, "You know, you got to learn to listen to the actors. They know what they're talking about." And I think that's the first time anybody ever said that to me on a set, that I knew what I was talking about. Thank you, you know? You know? It's appalling sometimes. Any other questions? And did I had what? No, you know, I was funny. I was the kind of actor, there were a lot of actors who did. Martok did, but I never did. I always felt like there were some really good writers there. And if there was one time I did protest a little bit, but just a little bit, because I didn't think it was correct. But it went by, and because we're in the middle of filming, you're best off to say, generally speaking, for a time of an arc of a character, something like that, than specifically on a set when we're filming. Because we were doing what I call the religious, the 5th one, or 4th one I was on Next Gen, where the Kahless comes down from heaven or wherever he came from. He was made. He was, they manufactured him from DNA. And so he's a religious and warrior figure. And I found out he wasn't real after I had a knife fight with him. I made fun of him, and I don't know if you all saw it, but and then at the end of the show, I kneel in front of him, and I said, "I don't buy me kneeling in front of it," but I had to justify it, And I said, and I did make a small protest. I said, "I don't think my character would do that." And then, as the director in my head, went off, because I used to direct theater quite a bit, and I would often hear actors say, "My character wouldn't do that," and it's not our job to do that in a way. It's our job to justify it, as an actor. But that was a hard moment for me to justify, and the way I justified it, I said, "If he continues, I'll kill him." It was like, because I'm a Klingon. That's how you deal with it. So that was the only time. But Martok, on the other hand, he really would write to the producers, the writers, because the producers were the writers in Deep Space particularly. And there were some fabulous writers, Ira Bear and, gosh, there were so many of them, but they were all wonderful writers. And he would but J.G. Hertzler is a writer himself. So he would, I would write in Klingon and he would write in English. And, I guess my stuff got nowhere, Yeah. Yeah, yes. Yeah, there's one, yeah. "You nature art my goddess. To your laws my services are bound. Wherefore should I stand in the plague of custom and permit the curiosity of nature to deprive me because I am some 12 or 14 moonshines lag of a brother? Why bastard? Wherefore base? When my dimensions are as well compact, my mind is generous, my shape is true as honest madams issue. Why brand they us with baseness, bastardy, base? Gowron. But, thank you. But that was the character I was doing when I got the call to do the audition for Gowron. And so it was like, I was particularly the last act of because on stage you can go crazy, and Edmund was the perfect role for that. So the end of the third act, the whole third act of Lear, I was just like, and going to battle. And I was acting Edgar, who was my half brother. We have a fight. Usually it's a sword fight, but my director wanted me to have a pole and a shield or something, and which was strange. And then he gave I'm sorry. He had the pole and the shield, and I had the broadsword. And he wasn't used to fighting on stage. He had never fought on stage. So he'd always miss his moves. Well, the problem is, once you start with a broadsword, and usually it's with two hands, you go like this, and that person has to be where they're supposed to be, because once you start the fulcrum down, you can't stop gravity on a broadsword. You might be able to twist it one way or another. He made the absolute wrong move, and I was going to cut him in half. And it's a dull broadsword, not a, which would hurt more. But so I went like this, and and I went up like this, and he moved into it, and I threw my blade out there like this, and I could hear my back go pop, 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 and I had like about maybe 6 to 10 more moves in the fight, and I was down on the ground, and I was able to turn over, and he said, "Can't you get up and fight again?" And I went, "No." And he goes, "What do I do then?" And I went, "Kill me." And so he did. But that was the beginning of Gowron, really, because I carried, when, you know, Edmund is an outsider in Lear, and he's the half brother who's not legitimate, and the description of Gowron was that he was an outsider, and they didn't explain it any further, but that was like. It was so clear to me that I should bring part of Edmund into, you know, playing, which I think gave me more dimension playing Gowron. You know, it was great. Anybody else? Okay. Yes. Younger, I did. I took a lot of lessons, and then when you got on the sets, I was okay with broadsword. I had done some fencing. I knew knife fighting. There's not a lot to knife fighting in a sense, but then when I did Gowron, I had to know batleth, so you had to train. But the day before, they would give you lessons and the stunt people would do it, and they're masters at all things. And you would have to do. I think the big fight that I had with Worf with the batleth, not when the time I died, but the other time, it was Apocalypse Rising, I think was the show. I don't know if that's the same one, but that was named in Italian. But it was Apocalypse Rising in the U.S. And we had 28 moves, which is quite a lot of moves to learn. So we had a rehearsal, I think, the day before, and we went through the whole fight. And they said, we'll break it up into 6 to 8 moves. But you had to film it. We had to film it all day long. And that was another one where they had a fire here and a fire there, and a fire there, and a fire there. We were surrounded by flames, and it was like 110 degrees. The average weight loss per day was 6 pounds to 12 pounds of bodily fluids you lose. So we were just drinking constantly. But yeah, so we did a lot of sword fighting, because I did the knife too. With them. But the one funny thing is one day with Jonathan, they had the disruptor, what I call the wrong name, but the disruptor was the right name, and they had a thing where you never say a word about firing, but I went, well, anyway, they cut the film, and the sound guy said, I think somebody went, during the shoot. And he said, what? You know, because we all had disruptors out. And he said, okay, let's do the scene over again. So we're doing the scene, and I raised my thing, and I went, and I went, it was me who did it, you know. Because, you know, you're kind of like a little kid, you know, again, and you go, you know. You know, it's like I feel pretty stupid after you do that. And I did it twice. I didn't realize I did it the first time. The second time I went, oh, I did it. It was like, and, Frakes looks at me like, good, O'Reilly. Yeah, real good. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. They're different. And we came up with all different theories, but we think, Dorn and me and Martok, we think that what happened to the culture was we started playing with a thing called hammer. And the hammer went, if you lose, you got hit with the hammer on the head, boom. So the heads got bigger. It was either, get a thicker head, bigger head, survive. And through the centuries, it developed into, anyway, that's all we could come out with, We're Klingons, Yeah, we thought that too. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, you asked a question because you can be positive, it can be negative. Yeah, yeah. And when I was the original show that I was on, that I played Gowron, they actually took every advice that I had, and it was mostly because, strangely, actors bring things in their past into their life as the character always, if we can. And when they first set up all the stuff with the Klingons, because it was the death of a leader, the Klingon leader, and I thought it was like nobody knew what to do with it. And I said, no, we have to be. And I always brought it to Patrick. I said, well, how about if we do this, with the pain stick? And then, because it's more formal. And then instead of just what Duras did, Duras just walks up and goes, But that's Duras, so it made sense for Duras to be, but me being more Klingon, more formal, more wanting to keep the traditions of the Klingon Empire, it was like, and then the lady said, Sanchi, meaning it's over, he's dead. It made much more sense. And in all the ritualistic things, I came in mainly because when I was a little kid, I was an altar boy. And so everything was ritualized. And so I went, well, the rituals I know were that of an altar boy. And I brought some of that in to creating those scenes, those Klingon scenes. And good question. Yeah. Anybody else? Oh, yeah. I'm glad you said that. I had two older friends who were really wonderful. One was Jimmy Doohan, Scotty, and the other one you had up was Ray Bradbury. And I did 3 of Ray Bradbury's plays, Martian Chronicles, which became an equity show, and I did Fahrenheit 451. I played Montauk, the lead, and that's when I really got to know Ray. And we talked a lot. He was a fascinating guy. And then I did Judy, my wife, Dandelion White. She's my memory, my wife, Judy. and Dandelion Wine, where I played the colonel, and I had this big singing number. It was a musical. So, but we often talked, and he was so far out in the galaxy, you know, writing brought him back. You know, he was really, he would go, I don't know about that, Bob, but if you think about it this way, and then he'd go, eh? And you go, eh, okay. He was a fascinating guy, and he just read all the time, and he wrote all the time, and he was a wonderful, wonderful man, and it was such a pleasure that I had to be young and to have two older people, not particularly mentors, but they were just friends, you know, and be able to talk to them. It was just wondrous, you know, so I really appreciated them, and I think they knew that too, you know. They were great human beings, you know, and I got to drink scotch with Jimmy Doohan, so not bad, you know. No, it wasn't green. But what? We missed. It's not St. Patrick's Day today, or is it? That was yesterday. Oh, I missed it. Well, happy St. Patrick's Day belatedly. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would just say this. The Klingon Empire understands that Pluto is a planet. There is no other way to describe it. We do not fly through the planet. It is a planet. There's a follow-up question. Although, I will admit, we cannot put a base there. Yes, it wouldn't be healthy. Yes. What was the GA? You know, I did a CD-ROM where they had the whole plate of, and as you know, and if you don't know, I'll tell you, GA was alive, and you ate them, and they were worms of some nature. And so there were two ways to do it. They would put like the gummy bears, and they would electrify them because they were in water, and they would electrify them, and they go, you know, and that was one way. And we were told, don't touch it, don't touch it. Don't try to eat that, Riley. Actors always eat, don't eat that. And the other one was, I think they put some guy under the table, and they, you know, and they would, yeah, exactly, and they would move it around, and it was like that we could eat, you know, we wouldn't be electrocuted. So we went, you know, Klingons are wonderfully disgusting, you know. Exactly what mom tells you not to do, we could do, you know. It was a joyful experience. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Laksha, Quacho, oh, now, if I continue any further, it's going to be 16 days too. But it was Shakespeare is the original is you know, is Klingon. It's not William Shakespeare was captured by the Klingons, and he was brought to the Klingon Empire, and he learned all our plays, and he brought them back down. And then he had, think about it. He had like 30 plays. How did he do that in 10 years? He took it from us. Vulcans, Romulans, Ferengi, lend me your ears. No, I'll just cut them all off. That was one of the original versions. So, I mean, Klingons are wonderful people. We're peaceful for a minute or two a day, and it's a joy. And thank you. Kapla!
FantascientifiCast, podcast di fantascienza e cronache dalla galassia, è un podcast originale LatitudineZero, da un'idea di Paolo Bianchi e Omar Serafini, con il contributo cibernetico del Cylon Prof Massimo De Santo, realizzato da LatitudineZero Media Fabric. Showrunner Omar Serafini. Sound design Fabio Marchionni e Julian Ziegler. Post-produzione Gismar Böhm. Creative producer Annalise Haas e Valentina Folkov. Coordinamento e promozione Verusca Sabucco. La voce di Val 9000 è di Valeria Barbera. Potete seguirci ed interagire con noi sul nostro sito fantascientificast.com, sul profilo Instagram FantascientifiCast, sul canale Telegram FantascientifiCast e sulla nostra community Telegram t.me/FSC Community, oppure scrivendoci all'indirizzo email redazione@fantascientificast.com. Tutti gli episodi sono disponibili gratuitamente sul nostro sito e su tutti i principali servizi di streaming on demand. Se volete sostenere il nostro progetto offrendoci una birra rumulana o un gotto esplosivo pangalattico, troverete tutte le informazioni e modalità nell'apposita sezione del nostro sito. Il podcast non intende infrangere alcun copyright, i cui diritti appartengono ai rispettivi detentori. Nessun byte e nessun tribolo sono stati maltrattati durante la produzione di questo podcast. Val 9000 e l'equipaggio di FantascientifiCast vi augurano lunga vita e prosperità e vi danno appuntamento al prossimo episodio lungo la rotta di Kessel. E ricordate, la fantascienza finge di guardare dentro il futuro, ma in realtà guarda il riflesso della verità che è davanti a noi. FantascientifiCast, podcast di fantascienza e cronache dalla galassia.